So after our scene in the country, things take a decidedly more violent shift. We have the fourth vision, and that is the march to the scaffold. Our hero, or maybe that's overstating a bit, our protagonist, shall we say, has been sentenced to death for a murder that he committed, and of course that murder is of his beloved, his obsession. And so he's now sentenced to die, and now comes the march to the scaffold where he will be beheaded. Just an incredibly theatrical movement, very short movement, where we hear drums from far away. We hear the kind of inevitable march that goes forward. He writes actually for muted timpani. We have those same timpani that we heard in the third movement from the thunder. Now they become kind of these warlike drums. And we have a really, really inevitable, inexorable march to that scaffold. We have the jeering crowd. We have just all sorts of theatrical elements that really puts this piece over the top. This is movie music at its very, very best, but way before the movies. And so really dramatic, fantastic music. At the high point of all this, after the crowds have been jeering, after we have all sorts of things happening, right before the guillotine happens, he's probably put his head, in on the pedestal, ready for the moment to happen. And we haven't had the idée fixe. We haven't had this fixed idea much in this movement because of all the activity, I think, and it gets kind of lost a little bit. But then we have the moment where all of a sudden, right before the guillotine comes down, he recalls his beloved. And again, the music stops, just like in a dream. Time is all sort of very, very funky. Things just stop. He looks up to the heavens, and we hear this, the soft clarinet. And even before the melody's finished, boom, the guillotine comes down, musically speaking, and then, not to be too graphic, we have some violin pizzicazos go blunk, blunk, blunk. And you can only imagine what that is a portrayal of. So the idée fixe, the obsession, comes back just at the very end before the guillotine drops. It drops mercilessly. We have some bouncing, and then we have the crowd cheering. In G major. This piano certainly doesn't do that justice. So a very, very theatrical, very, very quick fourth movement, march to the scaffold. Well, our fifth vision is the most extreme and the most crazy, and that is our protagonist finding himself at a witch's sabbath. And so we have all sorts of musical groans and laughter and strange sounds and just all sorts of Halloween-y type sounds that Berlioz does better than any other composer. It's fantastic. And who should appear at the witch's sabbath but, of course, now his obsession, the beloved. She is now a witch, and so she participates in this sabbath, and there's an orgy, there's Dies Irae, the very famous funeral chant from the Catholic Church, a parody on that. There's just, every possible thing. He's literally pulling out all the stops. And so, again, how does this obsession, this musical obsession, come to life? Well, it comes to life through the clarinets, once again. And we have, again, the scene being set, the kind of mysterious scene. We have the groans, the laughing from the brass section. We have all sorts of just strange things happening. And then, very, very quietly comes this from the second clarinet. So it's hard to play because there are all sorts of trills, there are all sorts of tricky things that Berlioz asked the clarinet player to do. But it's interesting that the very first time that this music, her music, the obsession music comes, it's very, very soft, but it's manipulated in a crazy way with trills and all sorts of just funny ornamentations that kind of add kind of savagery and kind of this kind of witchiness to it, I guess. Then later on, we have a very famous scene for the E-flat clarinet, a very small kind of soprano clarinet that is kind of bawdy. And he adds trills and stuff. We take that idea, the piccolo joins, all these kind of high, shrill instruments take on this idée fixe. This fixed idea that from the first movement was a beautiful, obsessed filled melody, and now it's taken on just a totally different manifestation that is just couldn't be more grotesque and couldn't be more over the top. And that really is how this symphony kind of progresses, if for lack of a better word, into this kind of incredibly theatrical scene where things end just in a fantastic way, combining the Dies Irae and the Witches' Sabbath theme and just an orchestral showpiece and just really one of the great endings in all of the repertoire. Well, I invite you to join us on October 7th at the Adler Theater and October 8th at Centennial Hall to hear this incredible masterwork.